Okay, thank you. Good morning, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. We're going to start our press conference. So today we are here for the release of the State of Human Rights report by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. So you're going to have the statement, which will be a summary of the report. Then after that, we'll take a few questions, and after that, we'll be sharing with you the full statement. So that is my name. I'm the head of public affairs and communications. So I'll be handing you over to the CEO, Dr. Bernard Mugesi.
Thank you very much. May I take this opportunity to request the commissioners to introduce themselves, and thereafter our statement will be read by the Vice Chair of the Commission, Dr. Raymond Nyeris. Commissioner.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Dennis Omalo. I'm a commissioner at the Kenya National Human Rights. You're all welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome, the Fourth Estate. My name is Professor Marion Mutugi. I am a commissioner with the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
Vice Chair, Dr. Raymond Nyeris, please take the floor.
Thank you so much, CEO and colleagues. Members of the press, I want to welcome you to this very important meeting. My name is Dr. Raymond Nyeris, the Vice Chairperson of Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. And I'm going to read our statement on the status of human rights in Kenya between the period July 2023 to November 2024 on behalf of our Chair, Madam Rosalind Odede. Fellow Kenyans, I am appearing before you today pursuant to the mandate bestowed upon the Commission, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, by the Constitution of Kenya to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms of all in our beloved nation. As an A-status national human rights institution, I take pride in the role the Commission has played nationally, regionally, and internationally to infuse human rights principles and standards in laws, policies, and practice. To this end, the Commission has always endeavored to make an annual State of Human Rights address that reflects and appreciates the gains, marks the progress, points the challenges, and calls out on areas that needs to be ensured that they are enjoyed. This statement is a summary of Kenya National Commission State of Human Rights Report 2023-2024 that covers the period of 18 months between July 2023 and November 2024. As we issue this statement, it is important to reiterate that human rights accrue to all by virtue of being human. Human rights are not a favor, but rather an entitlement, and can only be limited in accordance with Article 24 of the Constitution of Kenya. The state, as the duty bearer, has the responsibility to respect, fulfill, and uphold all human rights and fundamental freedoms. Similarly, the people as the right holders have an obligation to enjoy their rights responsibly. Fellow Kenyans, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I will now address you on the current state of respective human rights and fundamentals as provided for in Chapter 4 of the Constitution of Kenya, which contains our Progressive Bill of Rights. First, the right to life. The enjoyment of right to life is sacrosanct regardless of the circumstances. During the year under review, violations of this right were witnessed during the anti-finance bill demonstrations, which took place between June and July 2024. During this period, the Commission documented 60 deaths that were perpetrated during the demonstrations. The Commission also notes the unprecedented surge in femicide cases, with 97 cases having been reported in the last 3 months, according to the National Police Service. What is more troubling is the brutality in which these femicides are carried out. A case in point was the discovery of about 10 decomposing bodies, only women, from Kware dam site in Mukuru area of Nairobi. Further, in the period under review, the Commission documented the recovery of 448 bodies in Shakahola forest. The Commission commends the Inspector General of Police for acknowledging that deaths did indeed occur during the demonstrations and calls upon him to expedite investigations on these cases and bring the perpetrators to book. We call upon IPOA to investigate and recommend charges against any officers implicated in extrajudicial killings. We further call on the government to adopt the Minnesota Protocol on the investigation of potentially unlawful death. We appreciate the progressiveness of our judiciary, which in the period under review declared the mandatory life imprisonment unconstitutional. Additionally, we appreciate the efforts of His Excellency the President of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto, for his commutation of all death sentences issued up to November 2022 to life imprisonment. This is indeed a progressive step and an indication of the country's commitment to safeguarding the right to life. On legislation, on matters impacting on the right to life, the Commission continues to monitor the progress being made on the Prevention of Enforced Disappearances Bill, the abolition of death penalty, the Penal Code Amendment Bill, and the Preservation of Public Security Amendment Bill 2023, and we call upon Parliament to fast-track the enactment of these proposed laws. Right to freedom and security of persons. Fellow Kenyans, the rising cases of abductions and enforced disappearances are an affront to the human rights tenets that our country ascribes to. We continue to witness and record the cruel, degrading, inhuman treatment of persons taken against their will. The daring happenings recorded on videos and photographs are some even displaying civilian and security agent number plates, are rapidly taking the country back to the dark days of our history. The Commission has documented 1,376 arbitrary arrests, as well as 610 cases of injuries from June 18 to November 2024. These injuries were sustained in the course of the demonstrations and range from deep fractures, bullet wounds, soft tissue injuries, and inhalation of tear gas. Most of the injuries were inflicted by the security officers against protesters. The Commission documented 25 injuries inflicted on security officers by the protesters. We further recorded 74 cases of enforced disappearances in the period June to November 2024, out of which 26 people are still missing today. We call for an immediate halt to the unlawful arrests, abductions, and enforced disappearances, as well as the fast-tracking of investigations and prosecutions of all those found culpable. We further called on the criminalization of enforced disappearances and the ratification of the International Convention of the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances. The continuous insecurity and human suffering in the North Rift and Northeastern regions remains a concern to the Commission, with persistent loss of lives, livelihoods, and displacements. We call upon the legislative support to address banditry through the enactment of the Prevention of Livestock and Produce of Theft Bill that is before the Senate Bill number 12 of 2023. The right to privacy. Ladies and gentlemen, Article 31 of the Constitution guarantees every person the right to privacy. In the wake of the anti-finance bill demonstrations, personal information such as names, contacts, and locations of people, including details of family members, were displayed without the consent of those involved. The Office of the Data Commissioner, however, addressed the matter, reminding all citizens of their duty to respect and uphold the right to privacy. The thwarted attempt to give access to the Kenya Revenue Authority on people's data through the finance bill, the tax assessment, disclosure, or enforcement gives impetus the government to be at the forefront of safeguarding the right to privacy. In this regard, the Commission reiterates that all persons, state and non-state actors, have an obligation to protect the right to privacy provided for under Article 31 of the Constitution, Data Protection Act, Cap 411C, and attendant regulations. Freedom of association. Fellow Kenyans, the right to freedom of association, which includes the right to form, join, or participate in the activities of an association of any kind, is protected under Article 36 of the Constitution of Kenya. During the period under review, the profiling of 16 public benefits organizations as having funded the anti-finance bill was unconstitutional and against the spirit and letter of Public Benefits Organization Act 2013, whose operationalization took effect on 14 May 2024. The country had waited for this operationalization for 11 years, only for the actions during the protest to take us back with a stroke of a pen. To date, the authorities have not stated the culpability of the cited organizations. The Commission therefore views this as an attempt to intimidate and muscle PBOs, further shrinking the saving space. The Commission cautions against such direct and indirect interference of operations of PPOs, which are legally guaranteed under Section 3D to exercise effective control and management over the administration of their activities and funding. Freedom of conscience, religion, and belief and opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, the Shakahola tragedy caught the country by surprise, with hundreds of citizens having lost their lives in the guise of religion, whereas the Constitution under Article 32 guarantees every person the freedom of a conscience, religion, thought, belief, and opinion. This right is not absolute and may be limited on the grounds of public safety, order, health, or morals, or the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. The Kenya National Commission of Human Rights undertook an intensive investigation into the massacre, and our findings were recorded in the Shakahola report. We documented 448 deaths, with recorded statements indicating over 600 people were still missing. During the year, exhumations continued even as suspects of the massacre went through the legal process in court. The Commission further notes that only less than 10% of the bodies have been identified and handed over to the families for interment with dignity as per their cultural and religious beliefs. As exhumations and investigations continue, the Commission calls for the full operationalization of the National Coroner Service Act 2017, which will have enabled effective, independent investigations. The Commission also calls for the expeditious release of the proposed legal framework on the regulation of religious organizations for public participation. We further call on the National Treasury and Parliament to allocate and urgently disperse optimal resources to all the agencies dealing with the various aspects of the Shakahola tragedy. Freedom of expression in the media. Fellow Kenyans, the media remains a key pillar of any democratic country, often acting as a system of checks and balances through the relay of news and information. The Media Council of Kenya reported over 24 cases where journalists were injured during the anti-finance protests. Of all efforts to safeguarding the media space, lest we become a banana republic. The technological shift has also posed a great challenge since it gives the citizenry more access to information through the growth of social media. However, even governed, the space can be a source of misinformation or a disinformation, and thus more efforts must be done to ensure regulating, monitoring, and accountability. The Commission therefore calls for speedy investigations and arraignment of persons found culpable of perpetrating violations of the freedom of expression and the media. We further call on the Communication Authority of Kenya to resist any attempt to censor the press and undertake its mandate in strict fidelity to the Constitution and the law to guarantee the freedom of expression and the media. Right to assembly, demonstration, picketing, and petition. Ladies and gentlemen, Article 37 of the Constitution of Kenya guarantees every person the right to peacefully and unarmed to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities. During the year under review, the country witnessed two major seasons of demonstrations: the opposition protest of July 2023 and the anti-finance bill protest of 2024. It is worth noting that in both instances, the protests will begin peacefully, only to be brutally engaged by law enforcement officers, as well as infiltration of violent acts by the section of members of the public. The Commission continues to underscore that the right under Article 37 of the Constitution constitutes a critical tenet of an open and democratic society, and calls upon the government to live up to its obligation to facilitate and protect every person's right to assemble, demonstrate, picket, and present petitions to public authorities. The Public Order Management Act should not be applied in a vacuum or selectively, but rather respect and adhere to human rights principles and standards. The right to protection of the right to property. Fellow Kenyans, the Commission documented the blatant destruction of various properties during the anti-finance bill demonstration by members of the public. The Commission condemns these acts, reminding all citizens that rights have responsibilities, And as such, anyone found culpable should be brought to book. During the same period, the Commission witnessed the eviction of the Okiek and other indigenous communities from their land without due process and without measures to mitigate safeguarding suffering among the affected persons, especially through the loss of property. The Commission calls on the National Police Service to undertake speedy investigation and arraignment of the people involved in invasion of private property and businesses during demonstrations. We as a Commission further call on the government to respect and implement the communication by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights on the right of indigenous communities to their land. The right to the highest attainable standards of living. Standard of reality. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights acknowledges the transition from National Health Insurance Fund, NHIF, to the Social Health Insurance Fund, SHIF, as a landmark policy shift aimed at revitalizing universal health coverage in Kenya. Despite the notable intentions, this transition that commenced on October 1st, 2024 has been marred with significant challenges threatening the constitutional right. Marginalized communities are the hardest hit with the disruptions in access to life-saving treatments such as dialysis, cancer therapies, and maternal health care. The Commission urges the government, healthcare providers, and stakeholders to act swiftly and decisively to address the challenges highlighted in a way that gives priority, equity, inclusivity, and efficiency to ensure that no one is left behind in the pursuit of healthcare for all. While noting the government's efforts, both at the national and county governments, towards the attainment of universal health coverage, the country still has a long way to go to meet the continental 15% coverage in line with the Abuja Declaration of 2001. With a percentage expenditure of 4.5% by national government and 22% by county government, the Commission remains concerned about the elimination of out-of-pocket expenditure by patients. Cases of underserviced hospital equipments and other equipment lying unused in counties continue to cripple the enjoyment of the right to health. Mental health is becoming a national concern, especially in the ensuing tough economic times. The Commission welcomes the launch of the National Guidelines on Workplace Mental Health Wellness to provide for screening and recovery process for affected persons. The period under review was also not without the disruption of services through medical practitioner strikes over collective bargaining agreements. These strikes not only impact on the lives of patients, but also on their families, many of whom may not be able to afford private hospitals' medical care. The Commission, therefore, calls on the Ministry of Health, in conjunction with county governments, to engage in public participation and awareness, as well as inclusion, in the transition exercise from NHIF to SHIF, and urgently address the challenges faced by members of the public, including prioritizing the vulnerable groups to ensure no one is denied medical services. We further emphasize that the governments at both levels should fast-track interventions aimed at eliminating direct out-of-pocket payment at point of use for essential services, in line with the Kenya Health Financing Strategy 2020 2030. In addition, the Commission calls upon the government of Kenya to inaugurate the Mental Health Board that was gazetted on 19 June 2022, but to this day has never been inaugurated. The right to food. Climate change continues to impact the quality and quantity of food available to the citizenry of Kenya. During the season under review, the country experienced erratic weather conditions of heavy rains and flooding that impacted on the performance of crops, hence affecting the ability of the agricultural sector to adequately cushion the country against soaring food prices. The Commission continues to observe that the safety of genetically modified foods, GMOs, remains contested. There are still unanswered questions raised with respect to the impact on seed and state sovereignty. The Commission therefore sustains its call to the Cabinet Secretary of Health to make public the 2024 GMO Task Force report, 2014 GMO Task Force report, in accordance with the principles of access to information and transparency. This will aid meaningful and effective public participation in the GMO discourse. It is unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen, to also have encountered human engineered shortage through the provision of fake fertilizers, which so many farmers lose produce that could have contributed to the stocking of the national reserve. While action may seem to have been taken on culprits, the government also needs to strengthen vigilance and put in place systems of checks and accountability to curb, I repeat, the loss of crop to farmers also greatly affected their lives through loss of earnings, which can impact on the provisions of rights such as healthcare, education, among others. The right to education. Ladies and gentlemen, education plays a key and pivotal role in the development of any nation. Its quality will, if not always, reflect itself, especially in the labor market. This quality must be harnessed at the beginning of every learner step. Despite the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms giving recommendations on the implementation of the competency-based curriculum, a lot of uncertainty still looms from grade 9 students come January 2025. The safety of pupils and students must also be prioritized to prevent cases of deaths and injuries, and schools that were reported in 2023 and 2024, either through sickness, tear gassing during demonstrations, fires, or attacks in bandit-prone areas. As the country moves towards strengthening the quality of our labor market through post-secondary and graduate reforms, we must begin to leave no one behind. The Commission takes note of the new higher education funding model, which is facing challenges, particularly on adequate facilitation of students from disadvantaged backgrounds. We, as a Commission, call on the government to look into modalities of strengthening the already existing Higher Education Loans Board before reintroducing another entity. In addition, the Commission notes with concern the challenges facing our public universities that are inadequately funded and barely functional, as well as the ongoing lecturer strikes. The Commission calls upon the government to negotiate with the University's Academic Staff Union, UASU, so that students may resume their studies. There is also need to urgently look into the crisis in our public universities and recommend holistic solutions to address the perennial challenges. rights of special interest, and vulnerable groups. Fellow Kenyans, the Constitution calls for affirmative action on women, children, persons with disabilities, and marginalized communities. We note that during the period under review, the judiciary launched the Child Justice Strategy, which will work towards diversion of children in conflict with the law from formal justice systems to rehabilitation centers for ease of reintegration into society following their rehabilitation. However, even when not in conflict with the law, like during demonstrations, children have suffered especially from tear gas, fumes, and security agents storm school compounds with tear gases. We laud our legislators for their deliberate efforts to safeguard the rights and dignity of persons with disability with amendments to the Penal Code Section 146, which carried derogatory terms such as idiots and imbeciles. Additionally, the Senate passed the Learners with Disabilities Bill 2023, the Persons with Disabilities Bill 2023, and the Kenya Sign Language Bill 2023. The Commission lauds these legislative efforts and calls for an expedited process by the National Assembly. As a country, however, we fall behind in meeting the mandated 5% reservation of employment for persons with disability. As we laud the counties, such as Uasin Gishu, that has given opportunities for persons with hearing disability, more needs to be done to ensure inclusion. The Commission hopes that the passage of the Public Service Values and Principles Amendment Bill 2022 by Parliament seeking to obligate public institutions to prepare a report on the status of the values and principles of public service that outlines details of human resource personnel's gender, age, ethnicity, and whether they are persons with disabilities will support compliance efforts towards effective realization of the employment quota for persons with disabilities. The Commission therefore calls on Parliament to expedite and conclude on the enactment of the disability-related laws in a participatory process. The Commission also calls for an audit of the Elder Person and Disability Fund registration process. In addition, the county governments should provide mental health care, treatment, and rehabilitation services within the county health facilities to ensure that level 2, 3, 4, and 5 county health facilities set aside dedicated clinics to offer outpatient services for service users. On women and girl rights, the right to health tops the agenda, and of importance is access to reproductive health care. Therefore, there are still recorded cases of maternal mortality, and the Commission calls on the government to reconsider the reservation it has placed on the Maputo Protocol. As mentioned in the earlier part of the statement, the unprecedented rise of femicide is of extreme concern to the Commission. We call for a multi-agency approach in addressing this problem, including fast-tracking of investigation and prosecutions, as well as legislative reforms to curb and deter this heinous violation. Compliance with international treaties and obligations. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, the enjoyment of human rights in Kenya is not only facilitated by the national laws and policies, but further by international treaties and protocols that the government signs on behalf of our citizens. This acts as a benchmark for best practices, but also for accountability where local laws fall short. The Commission acknowledges Kenya's compliance with its state's reporting obligations under the various treaty body mechanisms as enumerated in the full report. The 2010 International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances needs ratification now more than ever. The Commission further reiterates its call to the national government to lift the reservation made under Article 14(2)(c) of the Protocol of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of women in Africa. This will augment and expand the access to comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services for girls and women in the country. Fellow Kenyans, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights recognizes the positive gains that have been made by state and non-state actors towards the respect, protection, promotion, and fulfillment of the rights of all persons in the period under review. However, urgent action is required to protect the gains that our forefathers and mothers fought for so hard. The political environment is dangerously polarized. There is rising tension and anguish among the people, particularly on the high cost of living, lack of adequate access to essential services such as health and education, as well as impunity and lack of accountability. The government must remain above board in monitoring corruption and holding perpetrators to account, because corruption is the biggest barrier on the enjoyment of human rights. The government must also be keen on placing development projects without infringing on the living standards of the citizenry for a more cohesive nation. The time for action is now. We call upon our leaders to listen to the plight of Kenyans. Listen to all stakeholders, including our religious leaders. Let us embrace each other and work together to build our beloved motherland. All hands must be on deck. That, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is the current state of human rights in the Republic of Kenya, this 20th day of November 2024. Haki kwa wote, kila wakati. Asanteni, signed by our chair, Madam Rosalie Odede. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the summary of the report. So we take questions now. You can take maybe the first. Madam, if you have a question, just raise your hand. The commissioners, our CEO and director will be noting. Then the VC, the vice chair, will allocate the questions to the respond. So one can go the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. So let's start. Introduce yourself and then you ask your question.
My name is Leonard Wamalo from West TV. I have two questions. The first one is maybe what is the rate or the percentage increase or decrease of the human rights abuses in the period under review and the previous period? Has it increased or decreased? Then secondly, anyway, so what is the state of men's rights and boys? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number two.
Yes, my name is Gordon Hussein from the Standard. My question relates to the report this morning that Ugandan opposition leader was abducted from Nairobi by intelligence officials from Uganda. And this follows the violation of Kenya's commitment on unfoldment principle, where Turkish people who are seeking asylum in Nairobi were referred back to their country illegally. And there's a pattern in Kisumu. Many months ago, the Ugandan opposition activists were also abducted by intelligence officials from the neighboring country. What is the status? what's the stance of the Commission in this pattern of violation of Kenya's obligation to perceive harm to asylum seekers who flee persecution? The second question, if you indulge me, regards femicide. There has been agitation by women rights activists that femicide need to be declared a national disaster. Would you lend your voice and credibility to that call so that our women and girls are protected?
Thank you. What was that one?
Just ask.
Yes. Yeah, that's the question. Okay.
My name is
Bro?
Let's come closer.
I'm the Omori, TV. My question is, there have been some links between those who are abducted and the politics of the day. Maybe from your intelligence and interviews, do you think the government is using abduction as a tool to silence opposition in Kenya?
Okay, thank you. Any other question before we get a round of responses for those? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for those. Is he gonna sign up or respond to this?
To the boys and men.
Okay, thank you so much. I will request my colleague Professor to handle on the issue of the rights of boys and men. And then our CEO on the matter of increase percentage or decrease of percent or human rights violations in the country. And I'll talk about the abduction of the opposition. Now, we condemn any form of abduction of those people who seek asylum in our country. Kenya is a country that respects its obligations. And we want to call upon the government not to deport those people who are seeking asylum in our country. They should abide by international law that requires them to respect the law. And so, in relation to that matter, we take exception, and as a commission, working in liaison with other human rights institutions, especially our sister commission in Uganda, we will get in touch so that we see how we can ensure our region is compliant in terms of human rights obligations. So, see you.
You can swap positions because of the microphones. Okay. See you. You can swap positions. Okay.
I will respond to the question raised by Leonard, whether we have experienced an increase in terms of, the percentage of the human rights violations. When you look at the statistics that have been provided in this discussion, and especially in 2023 demonstrations, and also 2024 GNC demonstrations, we can conclude as a commission that the numbers have actually increased. And if we have to compute that into percentage, maybe we need a minute or so, but the bottom line is that there is an increase in terms of those violations, and especially within the period of 18 months, that is quite a high figure, which has been read by the Vice Chair of the Commission.
Okay, thank you. Request you also.
Thank you very much. I would like to attempt to respond to the question on boys and men. The sexual and gender-based violence space in Kenya is on our radar as a commission. We have observed, like we said, femicide. We also observed that during the demonstrations, they were targeted group groups, including targeted groups that were sexually profiled. For example, we noted young women being thrown into police vehicles without dignity that is required. But on the question of men and boys, the Commission is on course. They are members of a committee set up by the CJ, the Chief Justice, to review laws, policies, and regulations on gender-based and sexual violence. This review that is ongoing has noted with concern the issues of boys and men. They have particularly noted issues of sodomy. They have noted issue of exploitation of young men. And this is considered in the amendments that will come up in the Sexual Offences Act. They have also considered that the Sexual Offences Act is strong on women as victims, but not as much as men as victims. And this is also being considered. Issues of sodomy in organized groups, during demonstrations and other disruptions in societies are noted and on our radar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think
There's one more.
Okay. You're on this side. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to respond to a question by, was it Wambui? Whether the Kitonga, yes, whether there's a link between the abductions and politics. For us as a commission, our answer to this is very brief, that there's no link, because those who have been abducted and those who have been arrested do not necessarily have even political interest. So for us, we say there's no link, totally. Thank you. Yes.
You can see we are a team. Now, on the question, there's a question on femicide. I want to say as a commission, we are concerned. We have been raising concerns over this matter, and we will continue raising concerns and ensuring that this matter is addressed by the relevant authorities. So it's an issue which we will continue pushing so that it can be resolved. It's a matter that can even be declared as a national disaster because our women and the girls are suffering. So it's a matter of concern to us as a commission. Any other question?
Yes, I think we have one more. Any other person? We have one, two. Okay, can take those two. Go ahead.
My name is Benson Saboke, GDVK. My question goes to concerning persons with disability. During demonstration, we saw a rampant way of persons with disability have been handled, rolled in cars, and also we realized there was some deaths. So from your report, do you have some of the statistics, how many people were affected, and those who, we know some cases of those who were deaf through the shocks. Were they compensated, or what is the status currently? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Brenda from Citizen TV. My question is in regards to the Shakahola incident. You have told us that you carried out your own investigation, you released a report, and from what you know is that about 10% of the bodies that were recovered from the sites of the massacre have been identified and released to their families for proper burial. My question then goes to what about the other bodies that are yet to be identified? The families have been really complaining. What is the commission really doing to help them, aside from just telling us that 10% have, made in time?
Okay, any other question? Okay, one more there, yes.
Just a quick one. My name is Mercedes from Spain International Agency, and I just want to ask you if you have any figure of the femicides. We are talking about it's increasing, but do you have a figure?
Okay, thank you. So, DC, I'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you. The question by Brenda from Citizen, Professor.
Femicide, the figures we have from the National Police Service is 97 in 90 days. 97 in 90 days. Shakahola, 448 bodies that have been recovered, less than 10% identified and released to their loved ones for interment, consistent with their cultural and religious beliefs, is very low. The process of identification of bodies involves forensics, particularly DNA sampling from the bodies and also from close relatives. There was a call that persons whose loved ones were missing and they had reason to believe that they are in Shakahola should provide samples. This process is going on through the government chemists. Unfortunately, the matches have been very few. But also, we have called as a commission for resources to be availed to various agencies, including the government chemists. The reagents, particularly for DNA profiling, are fairly expensive. And these had not been factored in the budget of the government chemists, they tell us, because they had not anticipated this magnitude of work. So we are calling upon the Parliament as well as Treasury to release funding to all agencies involved, particularly the government chemists, to be able to continue with generating profiles from the remains and from the loved ones. We also call upon communities to provide samples, because at times the samples that were provided did not match. However, we know that there are degrees of relatedness. For example, if there is a body and the person goes and claims that this person is their brother, we note that there are cases of unacknowledged paternity where this may actually not be the full brother but a half brother, and therefore there will be no healing. However, with expanding and increasing the scope of the samples that are provided by more relatives, we will increase the hits.
Is needed to speed up that DNA profiling? Or what is needed to speed up that DNA profiling? Or what is the deficit?
I think that question would be better be answered by that agency that is required. Thank you.
So at this point, do we have any of that happening, or do we have a halt in that process?
That again would better be answered by that agency. What we know as a commission is that they have been asking for more resources to be able to meet the demand of the work that they have, because this was not initially anticipated in their annual budget and the release of funds. We are asking that this be considered as a serious emergency that requires additional funding. And we also believe that this funding, the government chemist, is under the Ministry of Interior, and we know the Ministry of Interior has a large budget that they prioritize this. I also want to add what my colleague said, that there may not be any connection between abductions and politics, a direct relationship, but we have noted a trend that the people who are abducted were either very vocal during the protests, or people who were active in civil society, or human rights defenders. But we cannot say that there is a direct relationship, but there is that trend and that the observation. Human rights defenders, people who are vocal during demonstrations, and people who are believed to be involved in planning for demonstrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. The question on people with disability by Isaboke, CEO, respond to that.
Persons with disabilities, of course, do need extra support, extra care, especially during the demonstrations. And in the report that we have provided with those statistics, we have even the names of the individuals. We have the areas where the incidences, occurred, and other details are captured in our report. But just to give you a gist of that, we had 2 in Nakuru and 1 in Nyeri that are in our records. And of course, beyond the report, the Commission will undertake further follow-ups to ensure that these PWDs are protected. However, again, let me add that the Commission has gone beyond the statistics that we have read here today by presenting these reports in the National Assembly. I remember the Vice Chair leading a team before and appeared before the National Assembly Administration and Security Committee, where again this information has been given. And again a confirmation that the same statistics data has also been provided to the Senate, a relevant committee, upon request by them, to the Commission. Thank you.
So, I think we've come to the end. Anything else?
Okay.
Any question?
Thank you very much, Vice Chair, Commissioner, the CEO, and directors. For those who requested for separate interviews in vernacular, after this, I'll share with you the full report. Just grab this call, and then you get it, and also the statement. Thank you very much once more that we have come to the end of our press statements and press conference.
Thank you. Asante sana.